Mentasy TV. Keep on watching Mentasy TV.
This morning I'm going to talk to you about connections. People talked about it last time, a couple years ago. Everybody's made mention about connections. So today I'm going to talk about connections. And I'm really excited to be able to do this. We've got a world that's shrunk with travel. We're connected instantly with electronics. We had some really cool connections last night in the breakout sessions. At least I thought we did. But today I want to consider some connections that you may not have thought about before. These are some connections that connect us to the past. So we're going to take a little journey to the past. That the cosmos just started to expand. The earth and life as we know it just happened to come together. All random events. Scientists use math and physics to try to explain that. Even today, these explanations are going through evolution and change. I really find all this randomness hard to believe. If that were the case, it seems to me that doing something pretty simple, like taking this, you probably don't even know what this is. This is an old analog clock. But if this randomness could create where we are today with life itself, wouldn't it be pretty simple for me to take this clock apart, put it in this bag, and begin to shake it for a day, or a year, or 1,000 years, or 1,000,000 years? How many of you think that that random shaking would allow me to take this clock out and be all together again? Seems like that would be just not very likely to happen. I find it easier to comprehend that some great cosmic event did take place, but that it was all part of a much grander plan. Not based on randomness, but based on an ordered plan that we're now all part of and all connected to. This makes so much more sense to me as a logical person of science who likes order and just sees too many coincidences in life to really believe that they all tend to be just random. But now let's take that journey to the past. Could we possibly have meaningful connections to the life of Sir William Osler, one of the great physicians and diagnosticians of all times, by many thought of as the father of modern medicine? He penned in 1892 the first textbook of medicine, The Principles and Practice of Medicine. To this day, you won't find a better description of endocarditis and typhoid fever. He had a love of books, and he was a strong advocate of lifelong learning. He was a masterful bedside teacher. Listen to your patients, he's known to have said. They're trying to tell you the diagnosis. Listen to your patients. They're trying to tell you the diagnosis. Let's look at some of his connections. His great-grandfather was thought to be either a merchant seaman or a pirate, depending on who's telling the story. His father, Featherstone Osler, that sounds very British, doesn't it? Featherstone Osler was a lieutenant in the Royal Navy. And he was invited by Charles Darwin to be the science officer on the HMS Beagle on the famous voyage to the Galapagos. But Featherstone Osler declined that invitation because his father was very ill and he felt in his heart the need to stay with his father. 5 years later, he felt the calling to go into the ministry, and he became an Anglican minister in the Church of England. He and his wife traveled across the Atlantic into Ontario, Canada, where they ministered to over 260 acres that only was inhabited by 2,000 people. And he became what was known as a saddlebag minister, riding from hamlet to hamlet on a horse, teaching and preaching. He and his wife had 9 children, the 8th of whom was William. William's mother really was very devout Christian. and wanted him and prayed for him, William that is, to be a priest. But William, he was a practical joker, and he was always doing things to get in trouble. One time he and some friends let a bunch of goats into their school and locked all the doors. Finally, he did something so bad, I guess, that he got arrested. And he felt very repentant. So William decided to enter the ministry. He enrolled in the Trinity School and there became interested in natural science and in medicine due to exposure to two of his mentors. He subsequently was encouraged by them to go into medicine, and he enrolled in the University of Toronto, and then subsequently transferred to McGill University, where he graduated and was awarded the degree of Doctor of Medicine. He traveled to Europe for postgraduate training, and this included 2 years of pathology. He then returned to Canada to become professor of medicine at McGill, subsequently was drawn to the University of Pennsylvania Hospital as professor of medicine, then to Johns Hopkins University as one of the founding professors, and late in his career, he actually went back and became a professor of medicine in Oxford. Well, why am I telling you this long story, and where are our connections? Well, let's look at his teaching contributions for some hints. He insisted that medical students learn from the bedside, and he insisted that they learn from seeing patients. He established the medical residency as we now know it, and this model spread throughout the English-speaking world. He considered his proudest contribution the clinical clerkship, in which 3rd and 4th year medical students actually got to see patients. He pioneered the practice of bedside teaching, making rounds with a handful of students and demonstrating the physical exam. Soon after arriving in Johns Hopkins, he insisted that the number of didactic lectures be reduced and that 3rd and 4th year medical students begin doing histories and physicals in their 3rd and 4th year. He brought medical students into the ward for bedside teaching, and that's what he wanted his tombstone to read. He brought medical students into the ward for bedside teaching. This idea of active mentoring at the bedside spread throughout North America, Europe, and actually throughout the world. So here we are today, 3rd International Medical Conference, becoming a great physician. Is it possible that we may have connections to Sir William Osler? Could this story relate to us today in Ivano and in your future medical practices? Are there just random connections with us and him? Or could we be part of a larger, grander plan? William Osler and his father were called to God in the ministry. A God factor, a Christ factor. His father felt in his heart the need to care for his father, and William was called by his heart to enter the ministry, and then was drawn to medicine. His father traveled, taught, and pastored in small communities. And William was instrumental in introducing medical education to the concept of learning at the bedside for students and professors, a model for mentoring. Is it random that the life of this great physician just happened to include a God factor, a Christ factor, a heart factor, and a mentor factor? Isn't it amazing that the HMI International Medical Conferences just happened to follow the pattern of Sir William Osler's life? The first conference, the making of a great physician, the Christ factor. The second position, the second conference, the making of a great physician, the heart factor. In our conference this year, the third conference, the making of a great physician, the mentor factor. Making of the great physician, not the good physician. For it was William Osler who said, the good physician treats the disease. The great physician treats the patient who has the disease. So your lives are following in the pattern of this legend in medicine, carrying his legacy into your future practices. You'll be addressed as doctor, from the Latin doco, to teach. You will be given a lifelong lesson to learn, as did William Osler. So we really are all connected. As though some grand cosmic force, a divine force, if you will, pierced the heart of William Osler and his father before him, and pierced each one of our hearts and brought us here from around the world today at this conference. It just seems to make more sense to me that this is why we're here today than just through some random chance. Well, I'm using this yarn for a reason. It's an example of fiber arts and knitting in particular. Do we have any fiber artists here? Needlepoint, knitters, crocheters? Well, I come from a long line in my family of fiber artists. Believe it or not, I have knitted hats and vests and socks and all sorts of things. But fiber artists have unique connections that I don't believe you all probably have thought about. For when you're actually doing a project with fiber arts, some of your skin cells become incorporated into the fabric that you then share with whomever you give it to. You're actually sharing your DNA, if you will, through these skin cells. Very special connections indeed. So let's consider what you're doing here. This is what it's all about. What are you doing here? You're all working together. You're teaching in your weekend sessions. You're playing together. You're sharing ideas, knowledge, experiences. Sharing your DNA, if you will, as the fabric of your professional lives is formed. And you will be passing this on to your patients in the future. You're all connected. All of you are connected through past mentors such as Sir William Osler, as well as through your connections here. Value those connections. And I charge you to go into the world today as modern day Sir William Oslers, part of a divine plan, a God plan, a Christ factor, having empathy, compassion, and caring, a heart factor. Go forth as doctors, as teachers for your patients, their families, and their communities, the essence of a mentor. And always remember that Team USA is connected to you. We are praying for you, and we are really proud of you.